Hey, what's up, YouTube? We're back with another tier list. This time we're going to be updating our current bugs and bots tier lists. We're not going to be going through all of the stratagems today, mostly focusing on the ones that have changed most recently in the last 3 months specifically, and just in general, has my opinion changed on any of these stratagems, right? Are we learning new techniques to utilize them in different ways, or is there new enemy types or new emphasis on them? Because obviously we have received the Predator strain, and we have received the Incinerator core. So both of those have kind of changed up my opinions on these, and I will be trying to touch on the good weapons that have changed or like have affected my tier lists. So let's get into it. There's going to be bots. Before we get into it though, do please remember that I'm trying to isolate as much as possible these stratagems from the rest of the game so I can give you a more accurate representation of like where they would lie. Because you can very quickly go down a rabbit hole of, well, if you bring this stratagem with this primary, with this grenade, with this backpack, this stratagem becomes S tier, right? And although that's like a really good way to like build your Helldivers character, it's a very hard way to make a tier list because you're constantly having to think about all of these like numbers and all these different factors while you're trying to make a tier list, right? So like, yeah, if I bring, you know, the arc thrower with like 3 different stratagems and I bring thermites and I bring ultimatum and I do all these different things, I can bring it a lot higher and it becomes a lot better of an overall build, but the independent weapon still is quite a bit low by itself. But that's not to say that because it's low on the tier list, it's unusable or it's somewhere that you can't bring it higher. So just keep that in mind. Please, you know, don't get angry with me if you've noticed the weapon that you make really well, work very well, isn't higher on the tier list. This is mostly trying to look at a face value of how does this weapon perform versus other weapons and how easy is it to just pick up and be good. Cool? All right. Getting into it, this is bots. This is 3 months ago. This is like prior to like gas and so on and so forth. We'll start with just like placing the new stratagems. We obviously first have the jetpack. This is part of the Borderline Justice warbond. The hover pack, I should say, sorry, is quite effective versus bots, but it can feel sometimes useless because when you get up in the air, you obviously don't have much cover, but it is still useful to grab high ground so enemies can't shoot you, which is pretty damn useful. I do like using it, especially with like arc thrower. It's very fun with that. It's good also for like Quasar. I love getting on top of like high vantage points and stuff like that and just using the Quasar to like shoot you know, fabricators and things of that nature. It's an overall like very fun package and arguably maybe even a little bit better than the normal jetpack, I think, on bots. If you guys remember, originally I said the jetpack, I thought it was a very fun option, but as far as like usability and how strong it was by itself, yeah, you can get around the map a little bit faster, but like speed honestly doesn't always play a huge factor in bot missions for me. You can complete the mission faster, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be more successful if you bring this particular stratagem, right? It's like the fun versus like how effective something is. I would probably largely put like the hover pack somewhere in like B- as far as effectiveness. This one, like the jetpack, very much depends on playstyle and then how much you're utilizing it and finding those opportunities to be more effective. If you're someone who's very good and provides like a lot of like high ground support and stuff like that, hoverback's a lot better. If you're someone who's like only really using it to get over the occasional wall that the bots have, you know, maybe it's closer to C tier for you. We're going to do like updates to the tier list after I finish the new ones. So just hang on if you want to see some of that. Next, I would say the portable hell bomb. I think it's like a solid A-. I think I'm going to place it for A- just at the moment because I do feel like there's a big gap between how good it is and how bad it can ultimately be for a player. It's got a fairly long cooldown, but I do think that, you know, there's some actually really good strategies that you can utilize with it to get a ton of kills, but also just like take care of objectives very easily. And if you're ballsy enough and get pretty lucky, you can do some outstanding plays. Just do bear in mind that the kill counter is false. A lot of times it will double, if not triple, the amount of kills you actually got. So before someone's like, dude, it's S tier, I get 50 plus kills all the time, it's lying to you. sometimes with certain enemies. It's lying to you. You didn't actually kill that many enemies. The kill zone of it is quite large, but it's not that large. So just bear in mind. I do really like it for like, you know, the orbital cannons. It actually is a fantastic strategy for the convoys. If you can get close to them without them Gatling centering you down, and place it right in the middle, you will kill many of them, which is actually quite strong. Obviously, you're probably going to die in the process of doing that. But hey, if you manage to survive, good shit. But strong overall, pretty high cooldown, and it does take a decent amount to make good. The grenade launcher wall, I think, is like a solid I'd say like somewhere in the B tier. I do think it's actually fairly good if you can set it up before, like as soon as possible when a bot drop happens. Because what you can do is you can kind of like sit almost underneath it and aim up and then skim the bottom of the drop ships and kill so many Devastators, tier 1 units, Rocket Striders, and even the occasional Hulk will die. And it has the benefit of, if you stagger enemies that are still attached to a dropship, they will land and then do that bugged out thing where they just kind of like hover like a puppet. That can happen even with this, right? So you don't have to shoot down a dropship in order to get that animation lock. You can do that in other states too. So I think overall, I think the grenade launcher wall is actually quite good, especially on bot defense missions and eradicates. It can be very useful. And with enough pre-planning versus bot drops, which arguably are the toughest part of dealing with bots, I think it actually performs very well. Just start to learn that arc and utilize it by shooting underneath dropships. It's very strong. It's sometimes even better than just shooting down the dropship, because remember, it's harder to shoot down dropships now because of this tier list. When you shoot down a dropship now, they spin out of control and not all the enemies die now, right? It's only when they crack in half, and the only thing that can do that is the spear. Okay, now going through the tier list. I still think the recoilless and a lot of the other weapons here are fantastic. I do think that the airstrike has lost a decent amount of like love from me. I'm not bringing in nearly as much, and I feel as if it's getting kind of like outpaced by like the 500 kg or just like other things in general. It's still a very good stratagem, very good for like tanks and Devastators and stuff like that, but I do think it is falling behind like Eagle Airstrike or just like bringing a myriad of other things. I am gonna bring the 380 up to S tier. I do think that I'm continuing to like see this as like the ultimate like base destroyer, ultimate bot drop killer, and just like, hey, there's a lot of enemies over there. Let's make them run through a lot of like just shell damage. It's really, really hard to pass it up. I do think the 120mm barrage is very close, but it doesn't have enough duration. I find that I always wanted to like have a couple more shells, whereas the 380 lasts a decent amount of time, and the shell output is very high, especially for the damage and deep, like the explosion damage. So I find more success with the 380 versus the 120. Also, the radius changes do affect it. FRV is going to come down to like probably A-. I still think it's a fantastic one, but now when I first made this and put it in A+, it wasn't affected by ragdoll. The ship, or like the FRV, now gets affected by explosions, and it can ragdoll a lot more. So like the average Rocket Devastator is far more lethal to you and your team that's in the FRV. So I will bring it down a little bit. I still think it's fantastic for getting it on the map if you have a skilled driver, especially that one that can like avoid a lot of combat. But if you get into combat with this thing, it can sometimes feel really bad. So Precision Strike, I think, also is going to come down for me. It's really just being replaced too much by like the Ultimatum and the 500 kg and things like that. You no longer really need that Precision Strike. The Ultimatum basically just kind of is the biggest probably contributing factor, and then also like 500 kg is still amazing. So coming down to A-, it's still a really good choice as like I need to destroy this objective, or this particular enemy, or this tank, or this Factor Strider needs to take damage. Very good for that, but it is going to come down a little bit. Both mortars, still fantastic on defense missions, still good in just overall mobbing. I'm not going to be changing anything else in terms of the support weapons. Nice to mention, though, is that the heavy machine gun now isn't losing pen at a 45-degree angle, so it has full pen. It's still A+. I don't think it deserves to go into S just yet, mostly because using it without like a supply backpack but also using it without peak physique does not feel good. Whereas the AMR, I think you could use without the supply backpack, and it's still very much a top performer. You just have to be more ammo conscious. The Wasp, I think, still deserves to be an A-. It's great versus Devastators, great versus a lot of things. I almost wanted to bring it up. That's the reason why I'm mentioning here. I almost wanted to bring it up to A+, but it's still not great against Hulks, so you definitely have to bring something else to deal with them, like consistently. And then it is not good against Factory Striders and tanks. It's only good if you can flank them, and even then it's kind of awkward to use. But luckily, it's quite good against Devastators and things like that. So would highly recommend, and then bring something else in your loadout for those things that I mentioned that it's not good against. Laser cannons still doesn't feel like it has enough, punch behind it, but it's still not a bad option. EATs, I think clusters are still a great option to take occasionally, but this one is going to be my first swap. I'm actually going to bring cluster all the way down to B+. It's still a good option, but then I'm going to bring strafing up to A-. I saw a lot of people in my last video when we were talking about bots, try and convince me that it's S tier. I still don't think it's S tier because I think often you're needing 2 individual strafing runs to do things like kill a tank, to kill a Hulk unless you get really lucky. Even just sometimes Devastator swarms, you're going to get a bunch of Devastators that just survive because you get bad damage placement. Because the damage is not as many projectiles as it looks like there is. There's damage splashes on the ground. You can see this. So there's a lot of it's almost like RNG on whether or not you're going to kill the thing. Because if you get good placement or bad placement, it will affect how you feel about it. Feeling like you need to take 2 individual strafing runs sometimes sucks. Because in order to do 1 strafing run, wait for it to come around, then do a second, it could be 10+ seconds. When I could just bring an Eagle Airstrike and it's just 1, right? It's a more reliable 1. So I do prefer bringing the Airstrike or the 500 over it. But obviously having 5 is particularly useful for Fabricators. But another reason why I'm not going to put it higher just because of Fabricators, because Fabricators are really easy to kill at the moment. Especially if you have a teammate that's nuking from the outside with this or taking a Quasar. Fabricators are just not hard enough for me to be I need this. It's nice to have and it's a very fun stratagem, but it's not quite S tier for me. Walking Barrage still is an A-, A+. I think I could slip it up to A+. I still feel as if the other barrages are particularly better at dealing with bot drops, unless the bot drop happens and then they start to walk towards you and you're quite far away, so you can get that good lineup. It is nicer for the occasional base, so you don't have to throw it into the middle of the base. You can kind of throw it on the edge and it walks through, but it'll miss a lot of Fabricators a lot of time. It's not the best, accurate, RNG thing. And you might throw this at a sensor tower and it just straddles it or misses. It happens. Whereas I feel a lot more confident with other stratagems that I could throw it at a sensor tower and it will die to it. It's much more rare. Going from there, Spear is actually going to come up a tier, and this is a weird one. I'm going to assume the tracking bug is fixed on this. That's why it deserves to go to A+. And I mostly just want to make the point that it's actually quite good at shooting down dropships now because it's the only one that I can crack them in half and kill them immediately. But if you track onto particularly tanks or towers, the cannon towers, sometimes the missile will just go straight up and not come back down. It's a really weird tracking bug. And I think I'm only really noticing it on bots. Let me know if you guys are seeing it elsewhere, but it's mostly due to tanks and cannon turrets, which definitely hurts it. I believe you can counter it with the tanks if you can track onto the main shell rather than the turret, but still not great. But I'm going to assume that that's going to be fixed at some point in the near future. And then that will be why it's A+. Okay. It's shooting down dropships. This thing is now the king of shooting down dropships, whereas the recoilless was. Now it can't because it lost the potential to, because they kind of armored up those dropships. Okay, everything else I feel is pretty fair in A tier. In B tier, I'm pretty happy so far. Let's see, is there anything? I'm still hoping to see Laser Cannon get more charges. or just remove the charges entirely and just keep it that is. I would love that. Commando still is a lesser because it takes 2 rockets on average. Grenade launcher, I think, is still slept on by a lot of people. It's really strong, even though it's not great against everything. It's actually really strong against Devastator swarms for a similar reason why the wall is quite good. MG43, Gatling, smoke is still a fairly good thing at disengaging. All right, rockets. The rocket strafing run did get buffed. It went up to 4, which is very useful, and that does mean that I'm going to bring it up to B+, but I'm not bringing it any farther. It's still a very inconsistent weapon to kill Hulks. It's a very inconsistent weapon to kill factory striders, or it has a bad targeting on fabricators. You're going to throw this next to a fabricator and then it will track onto a random devastator instead. The target priority is sometimes very odd. You would think that a fabricator would have a higher target priority, but maybe they think, oh, well, it's lethal, shoot it at the devastator, but I don't quite agree with that. But it is fairly good against striders. It's good against tanks. It very regularly one-shots tanks. And it can kill Hulks, especially the ones that fire missiles and stuff like that. It can deal with them pretty regularly if they're standing still. If they start charging at you, that's where the rocket's travel time really hurts it. Okay, orbital napalm. Its damage over time in general is not particularly always amazing. I feel like gas needs a larger area. I have been warming up more to the arc thrower and starting to learn more techniques about lining up so you get the eye shot, and especially using it with the hover backpack so I can get some high ground, or just get up over the shields and the bodies and stuff like that, because I find bodies still get in the way quite a bit. It is quite nice. I have been enjoying the arc thrower more than I have in the past. I still think if it takes an awful long time to kill Hulks and stuff like that, and I don't recommend even trying to kill a factory strider, and there's still plenty of issues with the bolt just disappearing and just not hitting enemies. So there's still problems with it, but I do think it deserves to be a little bit better. And I also want to put the airburst right up next to it. The airburst has been shining a little bit brighter, especially with learning how to use the cluster better and when to use flak and when not. It's still not a great weapon to consistently kill a lot of enemies, but it's in the same boat as the arc thrower, where if you use it in the right context, it's actually quite good at killing patrols, and it can do an awful lot of damage to a bot drop. But often I would say I would rather use a grenade launcher because it's more consistent explosive damage, or I would rather use an MG43 for just more consistency, and I can just be more accurate with it, and I don't have to worry about the downsides of the arc, or the downsides of potentially almost killing my entire team because airburst went off on some random thing that was right in front of me. So yeah. Okay, next, both mechs now received 3 call-ins, and potentially in the future we might get a 35% decrease on planets that have the DSS active on it, which is interesting. I'm not really counting the cooldown because obviously that's only on particular planets, but I think that does mean that I want to put the regular Emancipator mech up to B+. Not quite A. I do think that there's too many things that still one-shot it, and especially Rocket Striders on tier 10. This is a tier 10 tier list. There's still too many things that just completely one-shot it, or just you will quickly just lose it and you have half your ammo back, and that does not feel good. But when in those moments where it is shining, it is very bright. You standing underneath a bot drop and just cleaning the undersides of those ships, you're power washing them, is insanely powerful. It can take out factory striders fairly good as long as the top turret doesn't snipe you immediately. Heads up, the Gatling sentries underneath do not shoot at you when you're in a mech, so you'll take no damage from them. They don't even shoot at you. You kind of tank and just shoot at their eye. It's very strong. I still feel as if the Patriot is going to stay in C+ or so. Doesn't have enough anti-tank because it doesn't have enough rockets, and the machine gun, although good versus some enemies, there's a lot of enemies that you would wish you had more pen, especially against Hulks and stuff like that. And it's where I've given the feedback to devs of why not give the machine gun pen 4, keep the durable damage really low, so at least it's more useful against more enemies. And then the rockets should at least be doing EAT levels of damage, in my opinion. They at the moment are not, so it's kind of disappointing. Both mines have easily come up to like somewhere in the B+ tier, especially like gas and anti-tank. They are a lot more useful now that they have lower cooldowns. They both received big lower cooldown adjustments, and it's astronomical. Like, it makes a big difference. And also the anti-tank mines are doing more damage than they were before. It's a big difference. I very much like it. And they're also throwing out mines farther. So in those like hordes of like bots where they're more separated, not like congealed, it's great. It's great in those situations. So I'm definitely appreciating mines a lot more than I used to, especially if you do those defense missions. I still think both sentries deserve to be quite low. They're only medium tier, so it's hard for me to advocate for like just medium pen weapons when we have all these great turrets that do more than just medium damage, or they do explosive damage, which gives them a big up. I still feel as if the fire sentry is quite bad. I'm actually going to bring it down to rework. I just hope for this to be reworked in general to do something more, like maybe more damage or just some pushback against some enemies. It's not quite doing enough for me. I will bring the anti-personnels up. I still feel as if the fire mines are not particularly great against bots, but at least the anti-personnels are getting better. Napalm is where it is. I will bring the regular jetpack a little bit higher for like the mobility of getting away from berserker variants and stuff like that, and just like being that person that runs around with a quasar and just like snipes fabricators and that's all you do and just avoid combat. I will appreciate that a little more. It is very like how effective you are with it is important though. How are you using it? Are you using it in the right context? Are you getting into trouble too often and just getting punished when you should be maybe more avoidant of combat? You know, keep those things in mind. Gas Guard Dog is also higher. It's not too much higher though, but I think in B-. Gas Guard Dog got reworked. If you guys don't know, it now target prioritizes enemies that are not affected by gas, and it will not chase after enemies a mile away, which is quite nice. Ballistic Shield now blocks melee damage. Doesn't really change on bots. You will see this change a little bit on bugs, but not much. And then next we're going into the last tier. I don't think anything here really changes too often. I do think that the Sterilizer is a little bit better than D tier. They did rework it. They gave it better handling. They gave it a longer duration. And that CC is decently nice if you're getting into a fairly melee-oriented combat with bots. I have seen people use it to pretty good success on like eradicate missions, just like to prevent like berserkers and other enemies from getting close to your teammates while your teammates kind of like nuke them, which is kind of interesting. Obviously, I still want to see the rework of all the other stratagems, but yeah. And that is our bot tier list for now. I think maybe the next bot tier list we might just go from the very start to the very bottom, reorganizing everything, but we'll have to see. Maybe they'll change a bunch of stuff that makes me want to do that, or, you know, maybe I don't feel like making an hour-long explanation. But anyways, let's get into the bugs tier list now. And now we're back for the bugs side of the tier list here. Remember, this has been a 3 months, wait since the last one. And you might be like, why did you place some of these things in these positions? This doesn't make any sense in the context of the game today. That's why we're updating it. All right. First, the Wasp, placing that. I believe in my last playlist we didn't, or I think I put it in the rework section. But I don't know exactly why I did that. I might actually have to like research my own video. I don't even know why. Anyways, the Wasp I think is like a solid like B- B tier. I think I'm gonna put a B- for now. It can shine on certain bug missions, especially when Spewers active. But if you do not have Spewers active, it can largely feel like it doesn't have enough ammunition, and it's very awkward to use in such large swarms. If you get a Hunter Pouncer variant, you're only really using this thing against Bile Titans, Chargers, and Impalers. Yeah, it's pretty good against Impalers if their head's already in the ground. It's not good against Chargers because if they get too close to you, which they will, it's like completely useless. And then Bile Titans, it takes like a mag and a half to kill one by yourself, which is like very ammo inefficient. So depending on the variant, it can feel very bad or it can feel quite good. It's a bit of a weird one. I'm gonna leave it in B- just because it can at least do things against armored enemies, unlike like maybe like a stalwart. But yeah. All right. Next will be the Hellbomb, portable Hellbomb. I like it. You know, just like in the bugs, or sorry, in the bots tier list. I thought depending on how you utilize it, it can be very useful, but it could also feel quite useless if you don't like use it at the right times in the right places. But you know, if you get like 5 Bile Titans in front of you because you forgot to deal with the Bile Titan nest, this thing's amazing for taking out 5 Bile Titans, right? So in the right context, this thing is like bar none, nothing can touch it. But there's also plenty of context where like it'll feel quite lackluster if you can't place it correctly or die before you get to the right spot. Versus some objectives like mega nests and stuff like that, I do find it particularly useful. Also for like large nests and stuff like that, it is nice to have like that ability to just drop a hell bomb wherever you want. So I do like it. Next we have the shield wall, the grenade launcher shield wall. I like this thing a lot on bugs. It doesn't always work amazing, and it does sometimes feel like, you know, depending on the variant, if you don't kill the enemy soon enough, you're gonna have bugs all over you. But at least it's like easy to get off and on, and you really can just spam this. If you put this thing down fast enough in front of a bug breach, you'll get easily 100+ kills, right? If you're being somewhat ammo efficient about like tapping it only when like the bugs spawn. This thing can deal with chargers, it can deal with impalers quite easily, it can deal with everything lower as far as like brood commanders, spewers, and hunters and pouncers, stalkers. The only thing it like struggles with is Bile Titans, because you're gonna have to shoot its stomach, but you can do a decent amount of damage to the Bile Titan before it gets to you and stomps on your wall. It has a short cooldown, so it's great for defensives or just like playing it fairly aggressively against like, you know, bug breaches and stuff like that. I probably wouldn't throw it down for just like one independent like patrol, but if you feel like you're going to be dealing with many patrols coming from that direction, it's quite good for that. All right. Next we have the hover pack. I do like the hover pack quite a bit on bugs, but it's a personal preference to which one I think is better versus the 2 jetpacks. I think they're both quite good, and I do want to put them both in B+. I'm moving it early, but I want to talk about both. A lot of people I've been seeing is like, the hover pack is obviously the better one. Why would you even compare it? It completely outclasses. But I think those people are missing the point of why they both exist. Hover pack is for high ground and getting on top of things, or getting high ground above a charger or something like that as it runs at you. The jetpack, or the jump pack, is good for distance, putting distance between you and your enemies, especially when you're trying to use a quasar or just like run across the map. It's very good as like your dodge roll, essentially. And it can get you out of trouble quite effectively. You obviously have to put more effort into thinking about how to get you out of trouble versus like a guard dog or the shield generator, but it's very good for both of those reasons. And I'm going to put them right next to each other because they both make sense depending on the playstyle that you want. They're both very good. So check them out. All right. That's it for the new stratagems. Next, going into our existing ones. I do think I was being a bit unfair to the Quasar. I think the Quasar and the recoils are interchangeable as far as which AT weapon you go for. Recoils is better for like just damage output in general versus many large enemies at the same time, whereas Quasar is good against a single charger at a time or a single Bile Titan at a time. When you get into the tier 10s that are like particularly more heavy enemy oriented, like the constellations that are like tons of chargers and stuff like that, I'd rather have a recoilless. But if I'm playing a little bit more team oriented, and maybe it's just a normal variant where there's the occasional charger and stuff like that coming out of these breaches, the Quasar feels much better. So it's kind of like a give or take. They're both fantastic, but it depends on what you want. I still think the autocannon is amazing in like all scenarios in the game. It obviously will struggle against certain ones, but it's a good all-arounder. I will put it in S tier. You know, you can take out charges, you can take out Bile Titans, you can, you know, deal with the occasional like, you know, ad clear with the flak. You can take out shriekers, objectives. It's just a good all-arounder. I don't think it's overpowered. Some people like are telling me that it deserves to be nerfed, and I don't think so. It's honestly a good benchmark of a weapon that, you know, is definitely performing very highly in a lot of different ways, you know, and I don't think it needs to be buffed. If anything, bringing other things up close to it would be a better result. 500 kg and orbital napalm, obviously you guys already know. Flyby pack is fine, although the FRV is taking ragdoll, you know, being affected by ragdoll now. I still think it's an A+ on bugs, you know, because they're melee-oriented units for the most part, and they're not really ragdolling all that much. I still think it's very good. Anti-tank emplacement is still fantastic versus those tank constellations. Very good. Airstrike is still great. We're going down. I still think the 380 is a great option, but I will be putting the 120 right up next to it. I have been using them both in tandem, and I think on bugs in particular, I think they both like work quite well against each other, right? 380 mostly better against like the bigger units, but the 120 is very good for like the smaller nests or just dealing with like, you know, a hunter or pouncer variant. Obviously with the mech changes, A+ still, it's very good. It's even easier to use now. We'll see if they make any changes. I love the mech for dealing with mega nests or just in general. It feels even easier to use now that you have 3. It's not quite S tier. I almost want to put it in S tier. Like it's like literally teetering on S tier, but it's mostly like if it had a little more ammo or if the cooldown was a little bit shorter on average, you know, it would almost be there because it still is high risk, high reward. You can still lose this thing in like 2 minutes, barely using all your ammo, and then you're out of luck for about 8, right? Doesn't feel great. So still high risk, high reward stratagem. EAT commando still great. I still think the railgun is like A+. I think I might bring it down to A- just because I think I'm going to be moving some of the other stratagems that are below a little bit higher. I would love to bring grenade launcher a little higher, but I don't feel like it's necessary yet because it doesn't have enough backup ammo. So I'm not going to be bringing up that one just yet. Arc thrower, I'd love to bring higher, but it's not very good at dealing with your, you know, chargers and bile titans. If it was a little bit better versus chargers, I'd probably put it higher. I am going to be bringing the flamethrower a little bit lower though. Unfortunately, I think it's been like underperforming and I still want to see it change to do more damage or have some pushback. I find myself just bringing torture. I don't even bring the flamethrower anymore. I still think it's a fairly good weapon, but I don't think it's good enough to sit there alongside it. And then aside from that, we have all of those weapons. I will be bringing the spear up. Nah, probably not. I almost wanted to bring it up. Hi, Luna. I wanted to bring the spear up a little bit more, but the spear still has a problem of like, if it doesn't hit in the right spot at the right time, it does not feel very good against bile titans and things of that nature. Next we have the tank emplacement, and those were fine. We're actually good. Next, moving on to B tier. That is fine. I will not be moving the 110 miller rocket pods. I was actually already pretty generous here. I must have had some pretty good games against bugs in the previous patches where I felt like 110s were in a pretty good spot on bugs, but it's nice to have the extra, and I have been taking them since the change more often, and I think they're okay, but I would like to see them do more damage on average, so they're like actually able to kill, you know, chargers more on average and just like be able to maim bile titans more. I understand their thought process of, you know, not wanting to one-shot a lot of these armored enemies because you don't want to completely outclass the rail cannon, but I'll be honest, we're already not really using it on higher tiers, so it is what it is. I think Luna wants a little bit of attention here while we talk. Orbital precision is still going to stay pretty low. I think there's a lot of options, especially the ultimatum, that is kind of outclassing it. And I say that because like the ultimatum is not even a stratagem, and I do think it's outclassing it. I do think the heavy machine gun has deserved to come up a little bit. If you guys don't know, they changed it so at one point, if your bullet hit a 45-degree angle, it would lose pen immediately. So it would go down to medium pen, losing a bunch of damage or just stopping you from penning a particular target. Now that's been removed. Thankfully, that was something I like actually asked them. I was like, please remove this. It makes the heavy machine gun feel really bad against bogs and bots. Now that it's not doing that, I think it's a lot more consistent weapon to deal with like things like a Hulk, or to deal with a thing like Bile Titan, or a charger leg and stuff like that. So it's a lot better. I still think that ammo economy on the heavy machine gun is probably not the best, and it probably should always be paired with a supply backpack, which is why it's not going higher. But it is quite fun to use on bugs now, and it's much more reliable than it used to be. I will not be moving up the Patriot exosuit. I still feel as if the rockets need to do more damage. They should be EAT like rockets. They should be hitting the breakpoint of one-shotting a Vol Titan or one-shotting a charger, in my opinion. And you could probably increase the ammo count of the machine gun a little bit. I've also kind of like thought, like, I feel like Hulks in general should just be able to stomp on bug nests, so you don't have to use your rocket from the Patriot. I think that would kind of bring the two mechs closer together if that was the case, but we'll see what they do. Still love Tesla towers, but unfortunately they do get killed very easily by your teammates and chargers, so that's the whole thing. I was being way too kind to the flame turret. I don't know what I was thinking. I think I was just like, I don't know what I was thinking. I was too kind to it. I think it's like a B minus, maybe even C plus kind of stratagem. I would like to see this reworked. It's not gonna be a rework just because I think it's a little bit better than just that bad, but flame weapons in general just feel like they're not doing enough. Luna, let's please not touch the monitor. Gas mines go all the way up to like A minus, A plus almost. I'm borderline on this one. You'll have to let me know what you guys, where would you guys place it? I think, I think it's very good, but I do see it sometimes get the classic mine treatment where it like chain explodes and it gets way less usage, or a teammate or a bug hurts the the canister that's holding all the mines before it even gets to activate. And that sucks. So you're definitely going to want to use this in more defensive situations and allow enemies to walk into it. So it makes it a little bit less or harder to use with teammates on bug breaches because sometimes they'll activate it. Still think it's fantastic, but I think that for that reason, it's not going to go quite into A+, but I love the decreased cooldown on it. I think it's fantastic. Anti-tank mines will be coming up to B-, not much higher just because I don't think, the only thing you're really bringing the anti-tank mines for is chargers. And like I said, for the other one, I find that my teammates usually activate them because of their stratagems, or chargers just, maybe one or two charges will hit one, but they kind of forge a path through it and very quickly just ignore all the other anti-tank mines. So I'm largely not always very impressed with that. What do you think? You happy with that? Or orbital laser, I still think is missing the extra stratagem usages. I wish it had more. That would be fantastic. I'm having trouble seeing. We have the Stalwart. The Stalwart will be coming up a little bit. B-. It still struggles against spewers, and it still struggles against hive guardians. It still struggles against chargers. It still struggles against a lot of enemies. Now, obviously, you can't just mag dump into the butt of a charger or mag dump into the stomach of a Ball Titan if you're a mad lad like Clay or Thick Fillet, but you're often just better off using a different weapon in these scenarios to kill a lot of enemies. Honestly, I'm gonna put the flamethrower right next to the Stalwart because I think of both weapons as very similar to one another as far as their overall effectiveness on the battlefield. Sterilizer, I think, is going to stay pretty low, even though it was reworked. I feel as if this weapon is more of a utility, support weapon, and that's okay. I think it's okay the way they keep it. Maybe in the future I'll bring it up if it gets more range or it can create a gas cloud on the ground. I think there's a lot of different things that it can do, but at the moment, not quite. We have the gas guard dog. This is going to come up all the way to A+. The reason why it's not going to go in S is that I feel like in a lot of bug missions, I don't need it. But on some bug missions, it's fantastic and very necessary and amazing to bring. Especially Predator Strain. I think Predator Strain wise, this stratagem is fantastic. And it's an easy S tier, but I think on the average bug mission, I don't feel like I need it nearly as much. And there's often a lot of situations where I'd rather just bring the ballistic guard dog or even a shield to just outright resist a lot of melee damage I'm gonna take regardless. Do I think it's largely better than the shield in most situations? Yeah, but I think they're fairly similar as far as defensiveness. Gas guard dog obviously a little bit better, but it's teetering. Just like we were talking about with the mech, it's teetering. It's almost S tier, and depending on how you're playing, maybe it might be your S tier. Okay, next, anti-personnel mines, like the other ones, I think will come up. I still think they're way too hard to see. So often, I either take them or my teammates take them, and we're killing each other. They're getting stuck on the ground, or like you're running by them and you think you're nowhere near it, and it just chain explodes, which is annoying. Yeah, I hope that anti-personnel mines just become more obvious in the future, or just like their detection radius is lower versus Helldivers, or just I don't know what exactly they can do to make it less team kill friendly. But dude, there's so much team killing going on if someone takes this. At least with the incendiary mines, they're not really team killing, but they're not as effective versus many enemies. Luckily, fire is quite effective, so that keeps it up there. But I'm happy to see at least these are coming up. Ballistic Shield comes up as well. It can now block melee damage. The problem is that it can get destroyed fairly quickly. And it has a very lengthy cooldown, unfortunately, when we're in that scenario. I'm hoping in the future that they just raise the overall health pool or decrease the cooldown of the Ballistic Shield. So I want to do that like melee oriented, or just have it on my back so any enemy that's chasing after me just hits it instead of my back. That'd be cool. That'd be really neat. Anyways, looking through this once more, I think I'm pretty happy with all the placement. Just going to quickly look through. I think I am quite happy. Yeah. Honestly, I think I might, as one final one, I'm going to bring the Gatling right down to B+. I've been seeing myself bring it a lot less, and I've been seeing a lot of other teammates bring it a lot less. I think it's just, in general, we just have better options for clearing out those hordes of enemies, especially with like gas grenades and things like that being up there. Like if I'm picking between gas, orbital gas, and Gatling, I'm gonna bring orbital gas most likely. Really short cooldown, more CC, and Gatling maybe just needs to do more damage for me to appreciate it more, or just last longer. If it lasted longer and I could like expect it for another 5 seconds or so, I think I'd bring it back up. But I think it's largely being power crept by a lot of different options around it, or enemies are just dead long before, or just dying regardless of gas, for instance. So anyways, that is going to be the tier list here. Let me know what you guys think down below. Obviously, we were streaming live with Luna on the desk in front of me. If you want, check by the Discord as well. I've been streaming every day except for Mondays on YouTube as well. So if you want to come by and just talk about these tier lists, please do. I love like talking about this stuff, and largely I change my opinion all the time on this stuff, or I start to use stratagems in different ways that I didn't use it before because someone recommends something, and I love those situations. So come on by, talk to me about things. Let's have a discussion about it. Thank you so much for watching. Consider leaving a like and subscribing to the YouTube channel. We'll be doing more of these into the future, obviously, and we have a couple more videos planned in the future. But let me know if there's any particular videos you guys want. And some of you might be asking, where's the Illuminate one? I'm waiting. I suspect at some point in the near future, I don't actually know anything, this is not like an NDA moment, that we're gonna get an updated Illuminate like casting, and at that point we're gonna redo all the tier lists for them, obviously. So, and I'm looking forward to that. So anyways, much love, thank you for watching, and have a great morning, evening, afternoon, night. Peace.